was also selling a Dodge Ram. He told them that he'd taken two men on a test drive just 2 days before Tim went missing, but he returned from the trip, unlike Tim. He was able to give investigators a description of the two men, detailing that one carried a small satchel and had a strange tattoo on his wrist that read ambition. phone that same day, said enough. A few days before Laura went missing, Millard purchased a .32 caliber Smith & Wesson revolver, and 2 days after the Eliminator arrived at the property, a Google search on Millard's computer asked what temperature cremation needed to be effective, and a text message sent to Smich read, "Barbecue has run its warm-up, it's ready for meat." A few weeks later, on the 14th of July, Laura's family and Sean Lerner reported her missing to police, but they were convinced she would show up, seemingly unconcerned about the young woman's disappearance, given her mental health and profession. Laura's case went cold, but Sean Lerner didn't give up hope. When he heard that Dellen Millard had been arrested for murder, he quickly joined the dots and contacted Laura's family, who then spoke to Hamilton police. Investigators were very interested in their story. After his arrest, a search of Mark Smich's property in Oakville found the iPad Sean Lerner gave Laura to search for apartments and jobs. They also found Laura's duffel bag at the property. A series of images showing the incinerator being used were found, with Mark Smich posing in front of it. A recording of Smich rapping was also discovered, with the lyrics stating, "The bitch started off all skin and bone. Now the bitch lay on some ashy stone. Last time I saw her outside the home, and if you go swimming, you can find her phone." Along with the mounting evidence against the pair, Dellen had written 65 letters to his ex-girlfriend Christina from prison, stating that they needed to ensure their stories matched. He told her to say that she was with him that night, and that Laura had overdosed on drugs. He also told Christina to destroy the letters, but she